is a new network set up for early career mycologists and anyone that finds themselves working with fungi, whether that's as a researcher, artist, storyteller, anything you can think of, this is a space for you. And it started because although the world of mycology is full of incredible and generous people, it can feel quite fragmented. You can't go and get a degree in it, and so people seem to stumble into it in roundabout ways. So the dish is all about pulling all of those threads together. We have, a directory being set up. We're going to do events and workshops and skill shares, and most importantly, give a platform to the already amazing work that's going on in this field. We haven't been going long, but for the time that we have, one thing has become clear, that no two people are on the same path. And today is about showcasing some of that. We are asking a really, really simple question of how did you get into this? Because as you're about to hear, there isn't a single route in, and quite nicely, everyone's paths seem to branch and weave just like mycelium itself. So let me introduce you to the panel. We have Harry Botley. Harry is an avid outdoorsman, a nature photographer, and a fungal enthusiast. He taught himself macro photography whilst living out in Brazil, and he has documented everything from bioluminescent species to Ophiocordyceps. He's very much early career and still trying to get his foot in the door, and he has an exhibition here upstairs, so do make sure you go and see it. You might notice some of the photos up there as well. We have Alice Bifanis. Alice is representing Fleetfield Lab, which is a grassroots CIC. They are pioneering using fungi to help clear our riverways. She's running a workshop tomorrow, and honestly, she's worked with edible fungi, medicinal fungi, and mycoremediation species all across Europe and North America. Hey, we have Dan Ryan. So Dan is a naturalist and educator. And in his own words, he's a mushroom tickler, which I hope he will explain a little bit more about in a moment. He runs talks and forays, and when he's not busy with all of that, he's also head of nature at the Lost Gardens of Pelican. And we have Ashley Goldbirch. Ashley is a mycelium designer, innovator, and artist. He blends fungi and crafts to make new materials, and I don't know if you've noticed the table and all of these panels, and also some overhead there as well. Yeah, this is his work. He's holding a workshop tomorrow, and he's also one of the directors of the Culturing Dish alongside myself and Sandro sitting over there. So this is the panel. So as I said, the theme of today is how did you get into this? And before I pass this on to the panel, I actually want to offer it to you, the audience. Whilst you're sitting here, I'd love for you to just have a little think about your own path into fungi, and the reason why you're here today, because I can assure you no two paths will be the same. Harry, do you want to set us off though?
How did it all begin then? What an intimidating question. Bear with me, I'm going to tell a story here. I grew up in what I would class as a bit of an ecological desert. I ended up spending quite a lot of time, though, playing fantasy RPGs as a teenager and as a child, wandering around collecting these little weird shaped things for potions. Eventually, about 7 years ago, I started to realize that the things that I was actually collecting were genuinely real things, and that I knew several species of fungi that I was encountering out in the world. So I immediately started to think, which ones of these can I eat? Which ones can't I eat? Fast forward 7 years after, countless discussions about fungi, a lot of learning. I ended up moving to the Brazil, quitting my job from the advice of the love of my life, who, thank you very much, by the way, who inspired me to go and work on a biodiversity research lab, offering my services as a photographer to help document all these different species and learn some really, really wonderful things. I guess now I'm trying to platform all of the work that I'd made there and try and keep photographing science, keep documenting things. There's a lot of people doing really, really cool things, and I'd really love to help platform that and shout about it visually.
Oh, is it my turn? Hi, everybody. So I grew up in Eastern Europe, in Croatia, in a tiny little village. And I love telling this story because it really contrasts my childhood in the UK. We were encouraged to pick fungi by our parents, by elders in our community. It's a really highly mycophilic culture in Croatia. And everyone mushroom picks. I don't know a single person that can't identify at least 20 different fungi. And we were feral children living in a village in the hills. And as is with rural villages, the rule was essentially that at the end of the day, when the lights came on, we had to get home. Now, being cheeky children, we like to take our bikes, we like to go to other villages, we like to explore nature quite further afield. And we realized pretty young that if we foraged mushrooms and brought them home, we could get away with murder. Nothing was said if we brought home a basket of chanterelles and it was 2 hours late. Everything would always be fine. So it was a massive incentive for me and everyone in my community to kind of understand the main sort of edible mushrooms that grew in the area and get really good at foraging them, find our spots for them, and like be quite proficient because we wanted to have as much fun as possible and then, do a quick stop on the way home. And that snowballed.
So I'm not an early career anything. I'm not an early anything, as you spotted. I'm a bit of an anomaly on this panel. I think Danny asked me first. I said yes. And then some cooler and younger people said yes. But she forgot to kick me off. So it's a longer memory for me. I liked dinosaurs as a kid. Dinosaurs evolved into birds. So I like birds. My first ever paid job was my grandfather paid me to do a bird survey of his farm when I was about 10. Me and my cousin, we got paid per bird. So some new birds made it onto the British list in this bird survey. But it got me interested in conservation, kind of, I suppose now what we'd call biogeography, kind of working out where things live and why do some things live in Hay and some things live in Croatia and all of that stuff. It wasn't until much later that I found plants. I got deep into plants. I probably still am much deeper than is normal to be into plants, but plants don't move, and they're actually relatively easy to kind of get to grips with. And it was once you're deep in the world of plants, you've only really got a couple of other places to go: mosses and liverworts and stuff, lichens and stuff, and I went down fungi and stuff. And probably next I will also go down mosses and stuff, or maybe lichens and stuff, and trying that a little bit. So it's been a kind of natural pathway through the world of natural history. And today I find myself in the position of not being early career and wondering what to do with all this very tedious knowledge. So one of the things that I think I should do with that knowledge is share it. And I think that's also what you should do with power. I've got some institutional power in my job, so I try to share that, kind of give people the opportunities that I wish I'd had when I was a bit younger. So that's what I think I spend my time trying to do. I mean, I even try and help you, Danny.
Yeah, so much.
So a fairly traditional-ish pathway through this little world. But I'm really glad I'm in it because it's getting really fun at the moment.
Mm-hmm.
Nice. Hi, everybody. So I guess I started I was inspired when I was at university. I was studying product design, and a lot of the work is learning how to manufacture with plastics and metal. And I've always been an avid diver, so I set my sights on looking into ocean plastics and was kind of shocked by the amount that there was in there. And it just so happened at the time that I was at uni, I was starting to learn how to grow mushrooms. So I started to kind of be like, well, how could I turn this into a material? And it got to a point where I was basically annoying my tutors because they didn't really understand what was going on or what I was presenting, and gave me a lot of ammunition to basically go under the radar, and they'd just go, great, yeah, this looks good. The first piece I ever did was actually just sawdust shavings with PVA because it didn't grow. It went very moldy. But fast forward on, I sort of jumped out of university and started contracting for various companies who were wanting to work with mycelial materials. I didn't have the full skill set myself, but they were happy to invest that time for me to figure it out. And it took me about 9 months of trial and error to get to the process of actually completing a full batch. Since then, worked for a lot of companies doing like mycelium insulation, acoustic panels, interior products and furniture, and generally just trying to mix the creativity of art and sculpture with sort of the technology and the manufacturing side. This industry has only been around for 10 years, so it is very unexplored. It's a bit of a gold rush. So yeah, I do a lot of materials. I'm sort of omnipresent in lots of areas. I try to corral my curiosity, but it's impossible to. But yeah, that's me. Thanks.
So the next thing I want to talk about is mycophobia. And for those of you that don't know, mycophobia is this instilled fear of fungi we seem to have, especially in this country. And yeah, it crops up all the time, even on forays, when often the first question is it poisonous? Will it kill me? As most of you know, fungi are so much more than that. And yeah, everyone here in this room will actually be tackling mycophobia just with the way that you speak about fungi. So my question is, have you encountered it yourself in your work? And is there anything you do to counter it?
So I guess the first exhibition that I did was in Bristol, and I had brought a mycelium bowl that I'd grown, and this was very much a 50-50 split of people who would go and touch it and be like, what's this? And I'd say, it's made out of fungi. And half of them would be like, wow. And the other half would literally just run away from it, absolutely repelled. And that's probably like the first sign that, the first time they actually heard about mycophobia and started looking into it. But it's definitely changing a lot more. I mean, if I had £1 for every time somebody said, oh, have you watched Entangled Life? Or, do you know Merlin Sheldrake? It's certainly starting to grow, but it's there's still that trend that needs sort of working in.
I was going to pick up on what Danny said there. We were out today actually with doing a foray around Hay. We found loads of cool stuff, and loads of it's downstairs if you want to go and have a look. And people tend to ask three things when you find a mushroom. Can I eat it? Will it kill me? And will it get me high? Right, these are the only three things that people ask about mushrooms. Imagine doing this with all the other things that we encounter in the world. You see a blackbird, and people don't ask, can I eat the blackbird? or a shrew, will it kill me? And yet every mushroom, so we've got to reframe, I think, our cultural story about mushrooms, because it's not just that people are scared of them, it's that we don't know how to relate to them on almost any level, which is why we ask, in my view, such basic questions about them. And one of the outpourings of this is this mycophobia, this kind of personal and also cultural fear of these things, which, as we know, is completely irrational because these things are underpinning every single ecosystem on Earth, and without them we would surely perish. So it's a really weird thing to be scared of, like many things that we're culturally scared of. I think your example about Croatia is really, really telling. We do not have a long-term folk and cultural affiliation with the world of fungi for reasons that I'm not quite sure of, but it's really interesting to wonder about why cultures do. So perhaps you.
I've spent a lot of time thinking about the answer to that question, especially coming from such a mycophilic country and being used to having to race the armies of old women to the forest at 6 a.m. Which is exactly what it's like when you're in less rural areas than where I grew up. They literally, there's armies of them going out, and it's incredible. In the UK, I think it's a part of shifting baseline syndrome. I think what's happened is that cultural knowledge got severed and lost. And over time, what was told to the kids was just, mushrooms are poisonous, don't pick them. And that just kept getting passed down, and we kept losing it, and to the point where we're at now, where, even my friends who have kids, they're like, when I tell them that, no mushroom is so poisonous that you can't touch it in the UK, they're like, oh, what? But, I was always taught to touch mushrooms, to pick them, to take them home and identify them. As a young kid, right, I was taught and empowered to, engage with them and bring them to the knowledge keepers in my community to have them properly ID'd. And this is really apparent to me when I started doing foraging walks at my university. So I started taking groups out into the woods and teaching them about edible fungi. Now we'd collect a bunch and we'd bring them back to uni. And my university was the kind of university that had lots of short courses going on. And so there would often be like different generations coming and sitting around the dinner table with us. I don't know if anyone's heard of Schumacher College, but it's quite a progressive university. That's where I studied before it shut down. And so on multiple occasions, I'd bring back a basket, and I could really tell which of the old ladies were not English, because they'd come straight over and be like, wow, look at these delicious mushrooms. Look, there's a porcini, there's a chanterelle. You found such good mushrooms. And then all of the Brits would come over to my table and be like, are you sure you can eat them? Are none of them poisonous? Oh God, I would never. And that was the kind of the attitude that I got met with. And the answer for me was educate, right? Just be really frank. Teach people about it. Why is this safe? What about this makes me confident that it's safe? And then sharing that knowledge. And how quickly people pick it up and how quickly people learn and stop being afraid of fungi is honestly one of the most magical things I've ever seen.
That was lovely, thanks. So this is something that I've actually been really blissfully unaware of until recently. But yes, I had a conversation, and it was revealed to me that apparently we're famously mycophobic. I was genuinely shocked, because from my experience, there's so much cultural momentum into like this love of mushrooms. Perhaps there's like maybe it's a lack of exposure. I mean, I myself probably only saw a wild mushroom when I was an adult, which is pretty shocking to me. But most of the people that I speak to about fungi end up sort of having this lovely curiosity now about it. I have people sending me pictures of weird things they're finding on walks, as I'm sure many people do now. So there is
yesterday. What was it yesterday? The dog vomit.
Oh yeah. My friend sent me a picture of this weird yellow thing on the floor. He just instinctually knew that I'd have an idea about it at least. So yeah, I got to tell him that it was dog vomit, but not the dog vomit you think it is. It's actually a slime mold or a fungus or something in between. Some of them, yeah. Super scary, yeah. It's Ophiocordyceps. That was the thing that went out to Brazil to go and photograph. And sometimes, yeah, I do actually encounter I tell people this, and they act like I'm the bringer of the apocalypse because they've seen The Last of Us, which I'm all in support of. I think it's a very creative way to show fungi and a new take on zombies, which is awesome. But yeah, I'd love to work to demystify it a little bit and assure people that they're very much safe by handling these things.
Yeah, we're not going to be taken over by Ophiocordyceps anytime soon.
Oh, no.
So the next thing I'd really like to speak about is access. And so fungi by nature are about networks and exchange. But as humans, we kind of often do the opposite. We have, knowledge behind paywalls, we patent material research, and we hoard skills. Obviously not the case for everyone in mycology, Dan. Again, he has helped me so much. You. But I think it's an important thing to talk about, and I was wondering how you thought maybe we could make the field a little bit more accessible, especially for those just starting out.
Yeah, so I mean, I guess in the material industry, there has been quite a unique sort of happening, which is maybe not the same to the whole mycelium industry, which is that given that the industry is relatively new, there was a few companies in the US, I'm not going to name names, but they're big companies making mycelium materials, which they thought, great, let's get some patents on this, let's get this locked up. Their main patent, their title claim, is growing mushrooms or mycelium to a form, which means anybody growing mushrooms for food, you put any substrate in a bag, infringing. You put a glass over a pinning mushroom on a tree, infringing. Nature, technically infringing. And this kind of snowballed. They got quite a few millions in investment, 70 million, and they put 50 million towards that on IP generation and suing, and basically just solidifying the industry for their own gain. Personally, I have rejected all of this. Quite a few of my clients that I've worked with in the past have been harassed by them. But one of the main things that I'm really wanting to drive home is I try and get people involved with making substrates so they can cast their own material, which is basically the thing they're trying to block. And it's like, if I can teach people how to make that material themselves, then it can kind of unlock it. But it's such a shame that an industry which could have such a great potential impact is being limited to just companies or people who can afford the license. It really should be like sourdough cultures over COVID. It should be everybody doing that and baking their own bowl. But I hope to see that change in the future.
That's mega. I didn't know about any of that, Ash. Hit us up later in the distillery. I think I take an educational view on this. I spend a lot of my time working with different educational groups, particularly HE. So I'll start there. But I'm not going to name names like Ash, but I encounter huge numbers of university students in very, very well-respected British universities who at nearly all stages of their studies in the natural sciences, biology, plant science, etc., never spend a moment meeting organisms like these fungi in the wild. So they all know everything about them in the lab. They know their genomes back to front. They know everything that you can do in a biotechnological sense. But take them for a walk in the woods and they don't have a clue. So this is clearly crazy. But it didn't start there. It probably starts in the primary school. There's a famous study that 7-year-olds were spending less time outdoors than prisoners in His Majesty's prisons. And 8 to 10-year-olds, on average, could name, when faced with 150 Pokemon characters and 150 very common British wildlife, could name more Pokemon characters than very, very common examples of British wildlife, which would be stuff like badger and fox, not even stuff like fly agaric. So we're in this completely, it's not just that we're mycophobic or even sort of nature phobic, and that contradicts what we tell ourselves. Probably the people in this room tell ourselves that we love nature, but we are probably the exception, and most people have not got the privileges that we have had to engage with nature in the kind of ways that we're talking about. So we really, really need to make access to nature number one priority. If you're going to ask people to save anything, first of all, they've got to know that thing and to love that thing. We have been starting for years and years and years in the we got to save XYZ realm, and people don't love that thing. So start them young. Make sure there's a beautiful bit of work by a professor of nature connection at the University of Derby called Miles Richardson. And even if kids through their primary school years, or if they don't go to school, the equivalent years, even if they hold a strong nature connection during those years, when they get to about 13 or 14, that dips off because they find boys, girls, pubs, whatever it is that you find when you're 14 that distracts you from all the other stuff. And this dip, this teenage dip, this you don't pick up again until you're older than all of this lot, and you're about 35. And when you've got some sort of stable job, perhaps stable relationships, stable money, all of that kind of stuff. And then suddenly you wake up one day and go, oh, I've got to run an ultramarathon. Or I'm taking up mycology, or I'm now a bird watcher. Well, you know,
all of them.
And it seems to be all those things at once that people are taking up at 35. So that's 20 years of dip. And in that 20 years of dip, this is the moment when people decide what they want to go and do with the rest of their lives. So that's a really important moment, that we've lost people from the one fight that we need to be fighting, which is saving the rest of life on planet Earth, because otherwise we are completely and utterly, are we allowed to swear in this forum?
I think so.
Completely and utterly fucked. 100% fucked if we don't save life on planet Earth.
Hopefully no children on the live stream.
So this is an issue that feels particularly close to my heart, as I've just finished university and now I'm working as an independent researcher, and guess what? I've been met with a bajillion paywalls that I can't pay. I work for a grassroots CIC. I do research in the field of mycology, working on trying to remediate. I write literature reviews. I need to read these papers. So a part of what's awesome about the place that I work for, apart from everyone on my team being super awesome, is that everything we do is open source, right? So every tiny little piece of knowledge that we create, that we find out, we share through as many different platforms as possible. I actually recently made an Instagram account just so that I could start sharing the results from the trials, photos of the mycofiltration dams that we've been making, just because I want there to be greater access. It's unbelievably important, as you were saying, Dan. It's just crazy. Of course we can't protect something that we don't understand, and if no one identifies with fungi, then guess what? They're going to be the first to go. So it's just unbelievably important to be going to as many open source platforms as possible, to be having as many workshops on these subjects as possible. Talks online like this live stream will be brilliant for people, right? But yeah, it's tricky.
Pretty much everything I've learned from mycology has been free access sort of information. A lot of it probably a little bit blunt for a lot of people as well. Sort of a Wikipedia article, dare I say, that's maybe not the most engaging thing. And I think it's really, really important right now to engage with this sort of media landscape and to help people understand mycology a lot better. It's probably in my opinion, the best way to sort of combat the mycophobia that we actually experience. I think it's a great shame. From what I hear, I think this is still currently true, at least. You can't study officially mycology at a university. We have courses for botany and zoology for other kingdoms, but it seems a great shame that we're ignoring such a huge and key part of the world. fungi being one of the oldest organisms on planet Earth. And yeah, I guess we've got a lot of work to do in that respect.
What a fantastic question. You've led perfectly on to the question I was about to ask. Because basically what I was going to say is a little thank you to Dan, because he actually invited me to a festival at the Lost Gardens of Helligan a few months ago. And yeah, it was such an inspiring time, and Merlin Sheldrake was there amongst many other speakers, including Dan. And I was so inspired by all of those talks that I thought up the culturing dish, and then it's all become this amazing thing that it is now. But to thank Dan, I'm actually going to call him out and bring up the fact that in his talk, he was saying that he's got a bone to pick with Merlin Sheldrake because Merlin Sheldrake has made fungi cool, and now he can't go for a peaceful walk because there's always someone talking mushrooms with him, which obviously is said in jest. But my question was good. Somewhat. But my next question was going to be about, this cultural moment that fungi is having and how the impact of Merlin Sheldrake and all these other amazing things that are going on. And whether you think, the momentum is going to continue and your own thoughts on the trajectory of where fungi is going to go.
Shall I start? Seems I've just been dissed. I did say that. I'd said that this used to be a quiet pursuit that I could pursue in some kind of relative peace. And now, from September onwards, my DMs in every single one of my apps is just full of pictures of, oh God, what's this? What's this? You know what this is? And I think Merlin and many other people have had a role to play in that. It's actually really, really hard to read any other book after you've read Entangled Life. It's particularly hard to read any other book about fungi after you've read Entangled Life. It's so good and has changed the game so much. He is just the most poetic storyteller. Yeah, there is a big growth in research across all the domains of mycology, from conservation, taxonomy, genetics, industrial applications, medicines, foods, etc., etc. There's been a big step up. Where we aren't seeing the step up is in what Harry was saying about you can't go and study a mycology degree. You can do Q's amazing plant and fungal systematics course that Sandro did, but that's an MSc. You can't actually study a degree in botany in Britain anymore. It's been, I'm going to say inverted commas here, dumbed down to plant science because it's more about the industrial application of plants and less about the botanical pursuit of knowing plants in all their glory, if you like. And the fact that fungal departments have always been hidden inside plant science departments, because until about 50 years ago, we didn't even know what a fungus was. We thought it was just a weird plant, so we just lumped it all together. Now, of course, we know that fungi are more closely related to animals than they are to plants, and yet we've still got these tiny little departments hidden inside already struggling plant science departments, hidden inside already struggling natural science departments, because British universities are going, well, all the money's in bloody computing and business studies and economics. And they're kind of forgetting, this is the ranty bit, they're kind of forgetting the things that made them great in the first place. So let's name Kent. Kent just dropped their entire anthropology department, their entire ethnobiology department. This is how nature relates to people and people relate to nature, of which you could study ethnomycology and ethnobotany and ethnozoology and all of that stuff. It was the best in Europe, probably the best in Europe and North America, and they went, no, but we can get more people in a computer science lecture, can't we? So we're in a really, really weird place. We've got this cultural phenomenon going on, loads going into research, but actually the access up through that passageway is that journey up to those points is a little bit opaque. And that's why I think the work of the Culturing Dish is really, really clever, because it can help reveal that there are loads of different ways to get to those different routes. So round of applause to Danny for setting up the culturing dish. Yeah. That's true. The other related to that, almost the only way, if you are allowed to study fungi in a British university, almost the only way that you're allowed to do it with any kind of freedom is in working out the different ways in which fungi attack our crop plants. So you get called a fungal pathologist or a plant pathologist, and then we work out how we kill that fungi, not how we celebrate and do all the other wonderful things. So we've also got that bit of our story completely twisted, because we've only been worried about what fungi do to wheat or maize or bananas, or and that's, we've got to untangle that and reveal all the wonders on the other side of that story too. Anyway.
What are we feeling? Anyone else have some points on not
yeah.
access on the trajectory?
I'll just quickly add that Exeter University, they've now launched a medical mycology degree, and I think Cranfield University have launched an applied mycology as well. So it's slowly getting in there, but funding is definitely way behind. But yeah.
I've definitely seen the impact on the woods, and with the whole rise of Silicon Valley's drug use and obsession with microdosing, you really see the impacts of places like Dartmoor or anywhere else where wild psychedelic mushrooms grow, where people are suddenly fascinated by the medicinal properties of psychedelics. So, not just because of Merlin Trail Joke, that's I put that a lot to Paul Stamets and to Silicon Valley. But I know it's only getting worse though. It's becoming really mainstream, and like the whole and it's charged the same as a gram of cocaine, a single little mushroom. It's absolutely bonkers. But the rise of mycomedicinals is real, and there are so many places coming out with tinctures and mycomedicines, and and we really see the impacts of that on our local woodland, especially down in Devon. I run forays at a nature reserve, and we've had massive issues at this nature reserve because people are coming and literally pillaging it. And, it's quite clear on all of the entrances to the nature reserve. It says, please do not pick any mushrooms. We're trying to preserve nature here. And yet we're having people coming in and leaving with bin bags full. Like, I think a report recently had people leaving with 8 bin bags full of ballets from this, protected woodland. And we don't even have nature reserves in Devon. Like, it's this tiny little nature reserve. There's loads of woodlands around it that aren't nature reserves, but because it's actually being managed and conserved for nature, it's yeah. I really relate to you and what you're saying about, mushroom picking being a peaceful activity. It used to be that when I went mushroom picking, I'd bump into other Eastern Europeans. And now I bump into everyone, and my phone is popping off with like, what is this fungi, and can I eat it? My mum just picks a bunch of fungi and then sends
We'll have
me
a
a photo.
DM off later. She gets sent the most photos.
Weirdest ones as well. But my mum will do it. My mum will pick a bunch of mushrooms and then just send me a message with a photo of them, just being like, can I eat this? Yes. Yeah, massively, massively. The issues at this nature reserve is because of commercial picking, and commercial picking isn't legal at all in this country, right? We just don't have the natural reserves for it. It's just, our woodlands are so pillaged already by bad forestry management that
Can I slightly add to my last point, which I finished on, and hopefully you remember it, was sort of that the system's a bit messed up. But because the system's a bit messed up, it's meant that a new subculture has emerged around fungi in lots of different forms. So there's like loads of hackers out there, self-taught, doing all this stuff for themselves. They're growing, they're producing, they're making amazing art and materials. So now we've got this sort of two, if maybe even more tiered than that, culture. And I think what's really, really interesting, those two worlds now beginning to meet. Sandra was telling me about the guys from the team from Kew going down to the All Things Fungi Festival in Sussex, which is now a kind of mix of fungi hackers, fungi academics, and people walked in off the streets going, "What the hell are you all doing here?" And that whole wonderful collision of all those cultures as well. And Merlin Sheldrake, who's my mate.
Best friends.
Did I say I met Merlin Sheldrake?
Never mentioned it. Interesting. Oh.
I want to do it.
I mean, it's been quite interesting because there was kind of a cartel in Imperial College about psychedelics, and it's suddenly starting to shift. And I don't know how Exeter managed to get that to be its hub, but it's very much starting to collect over there and come out. One of the points I had in terms of access to contribute is similar to what the Culturing Dish are trying to achieve. I think relying on community. Like when I first started, it was YouTube, but it was also be on an Instagram chatting to other people who are doing similar things, and just sort of relying on that community network gave me so much resilience in what I was doing and expanded my skills and just kind of gave a passion behind it, because I think in academia and sort of organizations, it can be really hard sometimes to get that passion and that kind of feeling of togetherness and sort of everybody just figuring it out. It's very much like you've got people who know it and you've got people who are learning, and you're either one of the two. But definitely like leaning on the community side of things. You know somebody else who likes mushrooms, just start talking about it. I mean, try and stop me at the pub. But yeah, and just share. Like honestly, like I think the core thing comes down to just sharing, like the mycelium does. Network as much as you can, and you've got cultures, hand them out. Like that helps you. It's like spread it far and wide. But yeah, that's my mush love speech.
On that point, there's a really interesting moment where you go from an acquirer of knowledge into someone who does something about that knowledge. And that's the moment that the world changes, when you start doing stuff with the things that you have learnt about. There's a temptation in this digital world, isn't it? Which consume gazillions of bits of data about, what you've got to remember at some point, you've got to turn that into something, because it only works if you do stuff. And everyone up here is doing stuff with that knowledge. Sorry, Harry.
Cool. Could I just ask what time it is? So I'd like to 10 to 6. All right, we've got a bit more time for some questions. No? Shall I know, I was thinking, go. So many name drops.
It can be really difficult because it often feels like speaking into an echo chamber. I try to talk to as many different people as possible that I meet ever on my path. I actually studied agriculture, so in my work, I work with a lot of farmers. I work with a lot of landowners. I work with a lot of people that really don't have the first bloody clue about fungi, and it is a game changer. My boss is incredible for dealing with exactly this. She brings the weirdest groups of people together for us to all have dinner and talk about how we can use fungi to clean up our local riverways, and it is mental. But it really it changes people's lives, and we've got Instagram now, right? And we've all got to learn how to use it properly. And it's difficult. It's difficult to not get wrapped into consumer world, but actually, it is happening slowly but surely, and it's the bridging of transdisciplinary concepts that's really going to create that change, and we're seeing that happening a lot with psychedelics now. The psychedelics world is forcing lots of different types of spheres of knowledge and ways of forming knowledge to all interact with each other. And there's going to be a massive shift in our scientific paradigm if we're going to have university courses on psychedelics, right? Because modern day reductionist scientists ain't going to keep up with that. So it's happening.
I guess my advice would be it's a little anarchist, but make it a problem. Like if you just keep sticking at it, I mean, you mentioned the turkey tail. I don't think it's necessarily going to change anything in the industry. I think the people who are like growing it and aware of it and using it are still going to continue doing it. But I think having it just constantly there, like say materials, accreditation is non-existent. There's a lot of architects out there that really want to grow it, and they're like, how the hell do we do this? And there's people still making it and still making structures and stuff and asking questions like, is it safe? How do we make this safe? And it poses them to have to research it. And I guess combining that with the fungal phobia, it's like if you can trigger into that, same with like psychedelics, how people are like, God, this is scary. We need to actually figure out what this is. And then that's led all of this research, which has brought it out. So I'd say just be a bit relentless about it. If you're interested in growing fungi or in whatever format, just do it no matter what somebody says, and it will change just because it will become more plentiful, I guess, would be my advice. I'm not liable for any lawsuits.
Ed had a question first. This, yeah, this is it. Sorry, but there's just so much passion, and I just want to quickly say like how incredible everyone on this panel is and all the different backgrounds, and yet everybody overlaps so nicely. And I'm just really impressed with the culturing dish and like what it's becoming, because there's so much fight, and in the meetings that we have, like there's so many things that we've got planning because everyone's here and everyone's passionate and everyone wants to be a part of it. And yeah, I'm just a little clap to everyone on this panel because honestly they did such a good job. Anything to add? It's telling me the time.
How much of research is happening in universities and who's put in universities, who's funding, who are the funders?
So I guess I'll just put my side on the materials. Academia-wise, in the UK, it's pretty barren. There's Newcastle University, the home of the Biobuilt Environment, HBBE. They're doing some really stellar work on sort of trying to quantify the materials and stuff. But in terms of outside of that, I mean, there's maybe 2 or 3 mycelial material companies in the UK that I could name, and they're all pretty small studios, like artist level. So it's really empty. Like I would love to see more people in that industry to actually collaborate with. But yeah, that's my.
Yeah, I think I look at this probably from the lens of conservation and ecology. And shout out to some Welsh unis in this front. ABBA doing amazing genomics, sampling, trying to gain a picture of the taxonomy of the species that we've got, not just in Britain but elsewhere. Cardiff, there's some really good stuff going on. I'm a bit less in tune. I didn't know about the Exeter psychedelic lab, if it is a lab. One of my favourite bits in the Merlin Sheldrake book is when he takes LSD and tries to think about his research problem. It's a really delightful passage, if anyone has read it. Some scientists were chucked in a room into a white box and told to bring into this box their hardest research question. And to think about this question, you're going to be given some LSD in the process. And it's just a charming passage of how he enters the state of, he sort of imagines being a fungi and what it was like from the perspective of this fungi. Anyway, that's a tangent that doesn't answer the question because I don't know much beyond the ecology and conservation stuff.
In the world of mycoremediation, there is Sweet FA. There is Fleetfield Lab that I work for, and there's Rhizocore up way on the other side of the UK in Scotland. And we're the only 2 organisations in the UK currently doing mycoremediation research. We are so far behind America in regards to this that it's not even funny. So it's interesting. We've just started collaborating with Cranfield at the Applied Mycology. And so we're hoping that we're going to get more students from that. Each year we have about 4-5 students doing their master's theses at Fleetfield Lab. So a lot of it is coming out of universities in terms of mycoremediation research. There is very little funding for like mycoremediation trials out of that. I was lucky enough to get a brilliant grant from a great ecosystem restoration organization called Mossy Earth. If any of you have heard of them or haven't heard of them, check them out. They do great research. They fund great projects. But you know, apart from that, I don't really know. Rhizocore are great. But they're an actual business rather than a CIC. We entirely run off of grants for our research. So yeah, there's really not a lot out there right now. Yeah. We love taking people on for trials, so if you ever want to come do some research with us, might have to write your own funding application.
How long do we have? I'm so sorry. We have run out of time. I know. So I want to say thank you to Harry, Alice, Dan and Ashley for being on this panel. I want to say thank you to all of you for coming and supporting us because like I said, this is the launch and it's really exciting to have so many faces here. And also a massive thank you to Ed and just Hay Castle and Fungi Town for giving us this platform. We really appreciate it. And before we all go, just one little last thing. Do you know how at the start I said to have a little think about your own path into fungi? Well, the distillery is doing mushroom cocktails. Why don't we all go over there and just continue the conversation? Thank you so much. Yay! Well done, everyone. Give us, yeah, no, give us another 3 hours.
Well,
Dang it. Oh, God.